Okay, welcome everyone to the public meeting of the Lakehead Rural Planning Board. I have a resolution. I could use a mover and a seconder to open the meeting. Bob and Gordon. It's been moved and seconded that the March 3rd, 2022 public meeting of the Lakehead Rural Planning Board be opened, the time being 5:30 p.m. Anyone in opposition? Excuse me. Seeing none, that has passed. And can I get a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please? Bob and Rudy. It's been moved and seconded that the March 3rd, 2022 public meeting agenda of the Lakehead Rural Planning Board be approved. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, that has passed. For the public meeting, is there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we will move into the applications to be considered. Go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry, just one moment. Okay, so the first application that we have received is from Bello and Von Gross for the property known locally as 3404 Salmi Road. The application is for the creation of one new lot, which would create a lot with 10.7 hectares and leaving a retained lot of 63.7 hectares. The subject property fronts on Salmi Road in Ware Township, is designated as rural in the official plan and zoned rural in zoning bylaw 02/2014. The property is abutted by additional rural lots, and the proposed severed and retained lots both meet the area and frontage requirements of the rural zone. The proposed new lot will also front on Salmi Road, and the applicant will have to contact the Ware Roads Board as well as the MTO for an entrance permit if one does not already exist. We received comments from the NDM stating that they have no concerns, as well as the MTO stating that they have no concerns, and no comments were received from the public. For that reason, we are recommending approval on this consent application with the usual conditions. You're still muted.
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Do we have the applicant in attendance this evening?
No, we do not.
We do not. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? And is there any questions of the Lakehead Rural Planning Board members of the planner since the applicant, the applicant isn't here?
Not bad.
Okay, seeing nothing, we'll move on to the second application.
Okay, so the second application we have before us is two applications from Edmund and Karen for the property known locally as 206 Parker Road in Gillies Township. Both applications are for the creation of one new lot, each with 2 hectares of size and 100 meters of frontage, leaving 28.07 hectares to be retained. The subject property fronts on Parker Road in Gillies Township, is designated as rural in the official plan and zoned rural in zoning bylaw 493. The properties are abutted by additional rural lots, and the proposed severed and retained lots will both meet area and frontage requirements of the rural zone. The proposed new lots front on Parker Road, and the applicants will have to apply to the Gillies Township office for entrance permits if those do not already exist. We did receive comments from the Lakehead Region Conservation Authority stating that they have no objections. We received comments from the NDM also stating that they have no objections, and the MTO provided comments stating that this is outside of their jurisdiction, so they have no comments either. We received 0 comments from the public, and Gillies Council passed a supporting resolution with a condition that the road allowance be transferred to the township if it's not already. So it is my recommendation that both of these applications be approved with the usual conditions, including a condition with respect to the transferring of that road allowance for the surveyor to include in the survey.
Okay, thank you for that, Carrie. I see we do have the applicant in attendance. I don't know if you'd like to say anything, Karen, or.
I will, thank you. So just so the board is aware, the back lot line of the proposed properties, there is a tree line there. And in consulting with the surveyor, we'd really try to keep that lot line away from the tree line. It's such, there's so few trees on the property already, we'd hate to cut that 8-foot swath of a survey line. So we may have to have an increased frontage and a decreased depth, but the resulting 2 lots will still be the minimum 2 hectares.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this application? Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? And finally, is there any questions from the board for the planner or the applicant? Seeing none, we will move on to the 5th item on our agenda, debate and decisions relating to applications held in advance. Do we actually have any applications held in advance right now?
We do not have any longer.
Okay, then we will move to adjourn the public meeting. And can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Bob and Axel. It's been moved and seconded that the March 3rd, 2022 public meeting of the Lakehead Planning Board be adjourned, for the time being 5:36 p.m. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, we will now go into the public meeting. So can I have a mover and a seconder to open the public meeting, please? Gordon and Bob. It's been moved and seconded that the March 3rd, 2022 regular meeting of the Lakehead Planning Board be opened, the time being 5:37 p.m. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the agenda, please? Wendy and Bob. It's been moved and seconded that the March 3rd, 2022 regular meeting agenda of the Lakehead Rural Planning Board be approved. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none. That is passed. Do we have any disclosures of pecuniary interest in this proceedings? No, thank you. And we do have 2 deputations today. So I'd like to remind the deputants that you have 10 minutes to give us your presentation, and we'll have time at the end, I guess, for questions from the board if they have any on the information that you've given us. So Mr. Larson, if you could go ahead. The floor is yours.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I can.
Oh, great. Okay. Sometimes we start talking and don't hit the mute button. It's a pleasure to be able to address the board this evening. And I wanted to pick up on a suggestion that I had made at the public meeting we had on February the 2nd. And that was to set a future date when the board would be considering both the bylaw and any comments on the bylaw that might be proposed. And from a perspective of the Trout Lake community, we don't have very many members or interaction of members in the dead of winter. So we usually have an annual meeting in June of every year, somewhere around Father's Day. And that would be a good time when our community can get together and decide what their final position is going forward and what had to be done in order to make a presentation to the board that was meaningful. I found that the last meeting we were all talking in generalities, and I think that's a result of not having a specific proposal that was before the board. We talked, okay, if we make this an aggregate extraction area, give us your comments. And I think it was pretty well 100% of the people who were there from Trout Lake suggested total incompatibility and that we were dead set against any proposal to make it aggregate extraction. Well, I've always found over my years of practice that if you have a specific proposal on the table, that we're more likely to get meaningful comments from people and dealing with the real issues that would be caused if it was made aggregate extraction. I think we have some definitional problems in the bylaw as it exists. We have a table of comment or contents that says section 11. We have part X as the actual extractive zone. We have in the general regulations references to the extractive industrial M2 zone. And then on the actual zoning schedule, we are calling it M2 extractive industrial. So none of these things are consistent, and I think that the board in dealing with this matter is going to make a site-specific zoning bylaw if it does decide that it's appropriate to propose that. And that all of those errors that are in the bylaw right now should be correctable in a site-specific zoning bylaw. So our request again is for a specific proposed zoning bylaw amendment that everybody can discuss, and that we have a meeting of the public that deals with that specific proposal. It's not clear from all of the materials that we have to date that both sides understand each other about the various points that each side has on what would happen. So we're requesting that the board set a specific date that everybody can plan for. And hopefully there would be some specific proposal before the board that we all could discuss together in a meaningful fashion. So I had spoken to Mr. Huzan earlier this week about why he didn't propose a specific bylaw, and he said that he felt it was not up to him, that it was up to the planner for the board to present this specific zoning amendment if it was going to be amended. And all he could do was comment about what he would like to see. So that sort of, I don't think it's up to the people at Trout Lake to put a specific bylaw together and put it on the table. And if Mr. Huzan is not going to do it for the applicant, I guess that does leave the planner for the board as the likely candidate to suggest what a bylaw would look like, so everybody could begin to understand the future of this property. So those are all my comments. We would really like to have a specific date that we could work towards. And I'm sure that once there's a specific bylaw proposed, that the discussion will become very meaningful. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Larson. Is there any questions from the board members for the deputant? Well, go ahead, Bob.
Yes, just again, for clarification, Mr. Larson, the date that you have in mind that you'd like to see us try to look to if we were to move in this direction with the bylaw, what date were you thinking of?
I was thinking around the beginning of September, and that would be either September 1st or September 8th. I know it's kind of hard when school's starting to,
yeah.
Having the first day of the month as your meeting, but somewhere around the beginning of September, I think would be appropriate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the deputant? Seeing none, Oh, go ahead, Axel.
I just wondering, Mr. Larson, are the campers intending to do any further investigations with respect to socioeconomic conditions or environmental conditions at the site? I just don't understand the need for such a long delay. I mean, we're talking about 7 months here. So I just wonder what's going to happen in that intervening time period.
I think that Karen Peterson, the president of the association, could perhaps answer that better as to what the intentions of the association are. I don't represent them. I'm just a member, so can I defer to her, please?
Yeah, sure.
Hi. Yes, we are going to be looking at further studies. We're engaging already in discussions with some experts in regards to water and the environment, as well as noise. So and that takes time to get people lined up. A lot of people are busy, it seems, and to be able to do the review and then to have the community look at it as well. But that's our intention, is to make sure that we understand exactly what the impacts are going to be, and to help the planning board make an informed decision on what's going to be moving forward in regards to the data and the analysis of that pit.
Okay. That's basically all my questions, I think.
If there isn't any other questions, we'll move on to the second deputant, and you can go ahead, Ms. Peterson.
Okay. Can I share my screen? I was going to put the PowerPoint up, and I did rearrange them a bit, so you don't have to look at the sheets. I don't know if you photocopied and sent out that PowerPoint, but if I could share the screen, I could go through the slideshow.
You should have the capability of sharing your screen now.
Yeah, I think so. Looks like it.
Okay.
There. Okay, and then, oh, I'd like to get it to the slideshow. I've got something up at the top now that I can't set it up with the slideshow, but I can go through each slide.
You can also stop sharing your screen for a moment and put it into the slideshow and then share your screen.
Okay. Now which one do I pause share?
I will stop it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Okay, so now I can't get it back up again. Okay. Okay, got it.
okay, now you can share your screen again.
Now I can't get the shared screen at the bottom. It's just giving me the summary. I mean the power slides. Maybe I'll just do it the way it was, and I can go through each slide. Oh. There. Okay. Okay. There. Okay, now I'll bring it back up for just a minute. Share screen. Gee, I'm sorry, I'm not able to get, oh, here we are. Here we are. There. Okay, so I may need, well, this is really not going to work out too well. Well, I guess I can, I'll have to do it the best I can. Can you see the slide? Very well?
I can see it.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can see the slide.
Okay. So I'm going to be doing a summary, and I've got a number of slides, but I tried to condense it. I may take 1 or 2 minutes over, but Renee thought that he may have a few to spare, but I'll try to stick within the 10 minutes. Uh-oh. Okay. It's not really showing up very well. Like, what do you see on this? Do you see that there's a step 1 and a step 2? And the title, steps to get to a license? Can you see that?
I can, right now I'm looking at step 2, licensing. Is this a good operating, and then the letter P.
Yeah, so that's not going to work. I guess I can't really share this. I'll
Are you not able to press in the top left corner where it says from beginning?
well, when I put from beginning, oh, here, there. Okay, I got it. Thank you so much. I missed that. Okay, so as I had mentioned before, that to get a license, it's a 2-step process. So the first step is the planning step. And the question being answered, is this a good location for a gravel pit? The second step is the licensing stage. And the question being asked there, is this a good operating pit? So the focus for the planning board, of course, is on the step 1, is this a good location for a gravel pit? And a good location relies on these elements. It's aligned with all the planning documents, so that's the Planning Act, the provincial policy statement, the official plan, the growth plans, the zoning, the regulations, that kind of thing. It's also considered within the context, the interconnectedness of all the factors in the environment, the balance between the social, economic, and environmental aspects, as well as the current and future development that is being proposed. A good location is not site-specific. It's not based on technical merits alone. It's not based on any selective policies that support aggregate, an indication that there's buyer support, or that it fits within the applicant's business model. The LPAT decision last time identified that the planning board, when they approved the zoning bylaw, that it was focused solely on policies which support aggregate. They failed to consider the recreational, residential land use and environmental protection, and they failed to consider the relevant PPS, the provincial policy statement, and the official plan policies regarding compatibility. The LPAT directive then was that you were to make a new decision, that you were to address the policies that support the recreation, the residential, and the environment, to demonstrate that there's consistency with the provincial policy statement and the official plan, and that there's sufficient information provided that shows that the impacts will be minimized. Lempiela's current application continues to rely on selective aggregate policies. It has a heavy focus on the growth plan, and the growth plan is really a guideline. It's not a law or policy, especially the growth plan in Northern Ontario. And how Tony Usher, our planner that we had hired in the first go-round, his comment was, the growth plan is so general and aspirational that it really has nothing to say that assists in consideration of this application. Lempiela's interpretations in regards to meeting those objectives that were part of the LPAT directive is that you can't mitigate social impacts. They are vague and subjective and therefore not appropriate for establishing zoning bylaws. But if you just look at history, in antiquity, zoning it was the birth of zoning, you could say. It separated incompatible land uses due to social impacts of odor, noise, traffic, and visuals. For example, in the medieval era, the smells were put outside the city walls. In the 1800s, there was separation between working life from residences and the green space. It was called the Garden City movement. In the 1920s, there was businesses were separated from residences, and that was in New York City, and that was around the first time they were starting to document zoning as zoning. So this is historical. This is not anything new. And the Lempiela interpretations as well, that the official plan lacks site controls, zoning conditions, or enforcement mechanisms. They say that therefore, the growth plan directs implementation be reasonable and realistic based on simple and clear data. Now, the growth plan does not direct anything. It is not a law or policy. It is a guideline. It makes suggestions. He's also suggesting there that the terms simple and clear are correlated to reasonable and realistic. And that's just not true. You can be very incorrect and invalid and still be simple and clear. And the 1982 OMB ruling also addressed these concepts that have been made in the Lempiala application. And what they said then, if zoning allows gravel operations, they would be subject to conditions and requirements of the official plan. Without some method of enforcing these controls and conditions, the result is impossible. So they didn't approve the rezoning. Informed decision-making as well. There's criteria when you're looking at data, and the data has to be valid, it has to be accurate, it has to be reliable, timely, and represent the context. The interrelationships need to be considered. You implement the precautionary principle when there's scientific uncertainty. It needs to align with the vision, the goals, and the objectives of the planning framework. And the vision of the planning framework is that there's a quality of life for all Ontarians. That's, I guess, in its simplest form, but there's a whole page. And I hope that you guys are reading the provincial policy statement, the preambles, and so on, because that sets the stage, that sets the intent of what planning is all about. The lack of enforcement is not a get-out-of-jail-free card. They seem to say that there's no enforcement anyway, so we can just go to the ARA and set it up the way we want, and we don't have to worry about it being enforced. There's all the more reason to be careful and do it properly. And the Lempiala and compatibility, in their application in 2017, they said they were compatible due to the buffer. The ruling, the LPAT ruling, said there wasn't sufficient information to support the claim of compatibility. Then in the 2022 application, they're proposing that they're going to have future extraction on a buffer. So they're actually telling us that the pit is not compatible. Incompatible land use in the PPC, simply put, 2.5.2.4, says that the sensitive land uses, like residences, cannot locate adjacent to an aggregate operation. And they say so because the reasons are it could affect public health, safety, and environmental impact. In LPAT, they referred to case law, and that's the Capital Paving versus Wellington, that it's fair to say the reverse is true, that a new pit would be incompatible locating next to an existing sensitive land use due to the impacts. You can't have it just one way. The location of the Lempiala pit, it's a donut hole surrounded by sensitive land uses on all sides. So to the north, there's the lake. There's the head of the McIntyre River. To the south, it's wetlands. To the east is the McIntyre River. To the west is the secondary highway. It's a school route. And then there's the permanent residences. So all around it, there's sensitive land uses. Lempiala supporting studies. I've had a couple of people that I'm talking about engaging to do the expert reviews, and they've already indicated that there's insufficient information. That mostly it's all desktop, it's modeling. And so I've sent one email so far. I've got 2 more emails that I can send you where they highlight some of the shortcomings of those supporting studies. What I would like to see happen, given all the snow that we've got, I've got a 10-foot bank just outside my driveway here. I'd like to see what the groundwater levels, if they take a sample of the groundwater levels right after this snow melt. I don't think it would be the same metric that they've provided in their report, which was taken, I believe, in the middle of August, when the water is low. And the Lempiala claims that there's a shortage of supply, that they need the Trout Lake pit to serve the Thunder Bay area. They don't provide any evidence in that regard. The next few slides are maps, and these maps show the extent of the glacial features in this region. Ontario has a wealth of gravel. This is where the glaciers were. It's everywhere, and it's everywhere around this district. So these maps are going to show the outwash plain, which is what the Trout Lake pit is on. There's also the moraine and the ground moraines, and I've also included maps of the distribution of the pits. So this yellow on this map, that shows the outwash plain. Now the last round, Lempiella was telling us that it was so unique at Trout Lake that was the only place that they could get gravel to make concrete. I've asked a number of geologists that question, and they look at me like I have two heads. And they say that it's all the same material that's deposited in the outwash plains and along the ground moraines as well. All of that material is similar. The light colored spaces in this map, that's outwash plain as well. So that's further south. These are all the pits that are already in the Lappy area, active pits. These are all the pits that are around in Thunder Bay, close to market, you could say. So shortage of supply. Bruno's Contracting already has numerous pits throughout the Thunder Bay district. So how close is close enough? Like, is there a metric that says if you're 5 kilometers closer, then that pit should be opened and doesn't matter about the disruption to the community? Like, it just didn't seem to make sense. I also understand that he's recently purchased some lands. I could be wrong, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, but that he's just bought some land along the Highway 1117. That's not far from Thunder Bay either. It's not a big area here, so why Trout Lake, which is 25 kilometers from town? What's the metric to say that that's the best place to get the gravel? He could also purchase it from other suppliers, and I was told the last time when I brought that up that it didn't fit their business model. So what's missing in the Lempiella application is a broader view of the vision that includes sustainable resource management, that includes things like maintaining biodiversity, maintaining the recreational areas, maintaining the water supply. It's much broader than they put one item in there about the aggregate. The official plan, there's some clauses that protect the integrity of the rural area. There shall not permit clauses if it's in regards to reducing the drainage of the water system or if it degrades the ecosystem. And economic considerations, they seem to put themselves out there that business, we've got to do everything to maintain business, but they're not an economic driver, they're a service industry. Lempiella failed to consider the context and the broader economic contributions of the Lake community to Thunder Bay. It's the people that have the purchasing power. There's a lot of renovations that go on out there, vehicles, there's a lot of money spent in Thunder Bay to provide the quality of life out at the lake. There's multiplier effects in regards to that purchasing power. And the resulting negative impacts to the Thunder Bay business haven't been considered. If there's a reduction in the quality of life at the lake, people stop renovating. I've heard even that the lake may be even drained, or the water would be so low, or people are going to be buying boats. It's much broader than just a pit that's going to be 6 or 7 years. It needs a broader broader look at the whole concept. LPAT also indicated that the principle of the land use must be established, and that's the zoning, prior to the issuance of an ARA license. At the licensing stage, MNRF indicated to me, they said, get the zoning right. They expect all the planning to be complete by the time a license is applied for. The ARA is proponent driven. That means they're the ones that are responsible to address the social environmental concerns. A business, however, is responsible to their shareholders in the bottom line. They don't consider social and environmental values. They likely don't know what they are. Government, they're the ones that have the duty of care for the public interest. So this is the opportunity at the planning stage to consider that in the best way that it can. The red flag at the with the Aggregate Resources Act is the zoning bylaw setbacks can be changed. I'm sorry, that's a typo. It can be changed when it gets to the licensing stage. The site plans can be amended without public, or municipal involvement. An amendment of the site plans can't be appealed. So once under the Aggregate Resources Act, there's no more municipal control. And I think that Stefan Hoos and the planner was very clear about that. When they get to the zoning stage, they can change it all, and we don't have any enforcement. The planning board doesn't have any enforcement. Summary, the Lempiella is surrounded by sensitive land uses, and case law says that it shouldn't be located close together. It relies on selective aggregate policies. There's still insufficient information to demonstrate the extent and duration of impacts, how they relate to the broader context, that they will minimize social environmental impacts, and there's a narrow focus in the planning report on the guidelines, which are just suggestions, they're not law. The conclusion, the application does not address the LPAT directive. The planning board is justified to refuse the rezoning application. There isn't a reasonable basis to approve rezoning. Sometimes you just have to say no. Thank you. Any questions? If I can get this off the screen now. There. Okay.
Are there any questions from any of the board members? Doesn't look like there's any questions. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank
And
you for your time.
yes, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. We have bylaws and resolutions on the two applications that were presented at the public meeting. So the first one is 1B/01/22 for Vaughan and Velo Gross, new lot in Ware. Is there any more information to present to us, Carrie? Or
I do not have any additional information, no.
okay, are there any other questions from the board? Seeing none, we have a resolution. Can I get a mover and a seconder? We have Axel and Bob. It's been moved and seconded. The application 1B/01/22 from Vaughan and Velo Gross for the purpose of a new lot on the property legally known as Concession 3, Lot 5, PCL 7458 TBF, Ware Township, Geographic District of Thunder Bay, as set forth in the application, be approved with conditions. Is there anyone in opposition to this resolution? Seeing none, that passes. We will move on to the next application. Is there any more information on this one, Carrie?
No, but since the applicant is on the line, perhaps I should read the conditions.
Oh, sure.
Okay, so the original executed transfer deed of land form and one photocopy for our records be provided. A schedule to the transfer deed of land form in which is set out the entire legal description of the parcel in question be provided. A copy of the reference plan of survey, a letter from the Thunder Bay District Health Unit stating that the lands are appropriate for sanitary sewage disposal systems, a written report from a certified well driller or master plumber that the retained and severed lots can be adequately serviced by a private water supply. The Secretary Treasurer will receive a written report from a recognized testing laboratory that the water source on the retained and severed property is potable, and that unless previously established, a 20-meter road allowance measured 10 meters either side of the center line of the traveled road be laid out as a part of the reference plan of survey, and that part be transferred to the Township of Gillies.
Okay, thank you for that. Are there any questions from the board for the planner on this application? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder for this resolution, please? Gordon and Wendy, it's been moved and seconded that the application 1B/02/2020/22 from Karen and Edmund Karen for the purpose of a new lot on the property legally known as Concession 5, South Part Lot 4, MR 146, REM PCL 7386, Gillies Township, Geographic District of Thunder Bay, as set forth in the application, be approved with conditions that were read out. Is there anyone in opposition to this resolution? Seeing none, that passes. And likewise, we have a resolution for the second application. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Rudy and Bob, that the application 1B/03/22 from Karen and Edmund Karen for the purpose of a new lot on the property legally known as Concession 5, south of Part Lot 4, MR 146, REM PCL 7386, Gillies Township, Geographic District of Thunder Bay, as set forth in the application, be approved with conditions. Is there anyone in opposition to this resolution? Seeing none, that also passes. We will move on to the minutes from our previous meeting, which all the board members had the email to them previously. Do we have, can I get a mover and a seconder for the resolution to approve the minutes of the February 3rd public meeting? Gordon and Wendy, is there any errors and omissions on the minutes? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded that the Lakehead Rural Planning Board approves the minutes of the February 3rd, 22 public meeting as presented. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, they pass. And the minutes for the regular meeting of the February 3rd meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Bob and Gordon, it's been moved and seconded that the Lakehead Rural Planning Board approves the minutes of the February 3rd, 22 regular meeting as presented. Any errors or omissions in these minutes? Seeing none, anyone in opposition to the resolution? Okay, that also passes. Okay. We have any matters arising from the minutes. We have a recommendation from the planning consultant. Carrie, I'll let you talk to us about that.
Sure. So I sent you the email from our planner, Jeff Port, recommending how we should move forward with the Lampiella file. He believes that the ARA, the aggregate license, has to happen at the same time as this. So the applicant and the agent have been advised that they need to move forward with their M&RF application so that they can get to a point where they're making an approval as well. So that should there be an appeal, they both happen at the same time. The aggregate license public meeting will also give further opportunity for the public to provide their input and their concerns. And it'll be handled through that process as well. So this is sort of a 2-point system where they're going to get the same thing that we're getting. In some cases, different information will come up there and we can use that to help us make the decision. So really, we're looking at waiting for the information from the application for their aggregate license to go through before we make a decision.
Are there any questions on that or comments from the board? Okay, go ahead, Wendy.
I just wanted to ask out of clarification. I thought at some point I had heard that there was a tighter timeline on this, like June. Did I hear incorrectly, or is there a tighter timeline? I know the suggestion has been made for a September decision framework of time, but is there not a time limit that we're under to respond to this application?
There is a 90-day period when you need to make a decision. However, that always comes second to the requirement for further information. So we are perfectly within our rights to say that we have to wait until they meet this requirement before we can make a decision. It's up to the board how they want to continue, but this is the recommendation from our consultant.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm sure we will be discussing this in the near future again. So do we have any reports, Carrie?
I do not have any reports.
Okay, we have a couple items of correspondence. I'll let you go through them, Carrie.
Sure, these are all just information pieces. They're all notices of passing that we chose not to comment on previously. So it's just some zoning and official plan amendments that have passed through the city of Thunder Bay.
Okay, thank you. And now we actually do have a reason to have a closed session for this meeting to discuss some legal matters. So we need a mover and a seconder for the resolution to move into closed. Bob, And Wendy, it's been moved and seconded that the Lakehead Rural Planning Board resolves to a closed session to discuss matters pertaining to legal matters, the hour being 6:15 PM. Anyone in opposition? Seeing none, we will now move into closed, and thank you to the public members that have